The banquets started at 3 in the morning. There was so much food on the tables, you could have fed an entire village for a month. Meanwhile, just 3 kilometers from the palace, people were eating tree bark so they wouldn't starve to death. The general ordered the girls to undress. There were about 40 of them. They stood there naked while he walked along the line, slowly choosing. He pointed at 3. The rest kept standing and waiting, just in case he changed his mind. I saw this every week for 10 years, and I stayed quiet, because those who spoke disappeared forever. You will never see these images in any official broadcast. What happened at night inside the Kim family residences was supposed to remain a secret forever. People were executed together with their families for revealing it. The man whose testimony forms the basis of this video spent 10 years working inside Kim Jong-il's private residences. He refuses to give his name or show his face. The regime has long arms, and even now, far from North Korea, he checks the locks on his doors every night. A few years ago, he testified to South Korean intelligence. The reports are classified, but fragments leaked to journalists. Today we're going to tell you what was happening behind palace walls while the country was dying of hunger. Let me warn you right away. This material is not for the faint-hearted. If you're ready, hit subscribe and drop a like. That's your way of saying you want to know the truth about the most closed-off regime on the planet. Let's begin. Let's start with the geography of decadence. Kim Jong-il had more than 20 residences scattered across the entire country, and we're not talking about modest government dachas. These were real palaces, architectural masterpieces built, without exaggeration, on the bones of a starving people. The main residence was located in the Ryongseong complex north of Pyongyang. The territory covered several square kilometers and included artificial lakes, golf courses, stables with purebred Arabian horses, heated swimming pools, private cinemas, and even bowling alleys. All this splendor existed in a country where the overwhelming majority of the population had never seen hot running water in their entire lives. Our witness still remembers his first work day at the residence. According to him, they brought him there blindfolded, and when the blindfold was finally removed, he was speechless for several minutes. It felt as if he had somehow been transported to a completely different country. Marble everywhere, gold leaf, crystal chandeliers the size of a car, carpets so thick your feet sank in up to the ankle. He grew up in a village in the north, where a family of 6 shared 1 bowl of rice a day, and here, even the leader's dogs ate better than his family ever had. Speaking of dogs, Kim Jong-il had about 7 of them, all purebred, imported from Europe. Each dog had a personal chef who prepared individual menus: premium beef, specially cooked rice, fresh vegetables. At the very time when the dictator's dogs were eating steak, somewhere between several 100,000 and 3 million people died of hunger. 3 million human lives. And the dogs were eating medium-rare steaks. But the dog's diet was nothing compared to what Kim Jong-il himself ate. Kenji Fujimoto, a Japanese sushi chef who spent nearly 20 years as Kim's personal cook, left us detailed accounts of the leader's culinary demands. Even seasoned food critics find the scale hard to imagine. Kim Jong-il required that the rice served at his table be grown on specially designated fields under expert supervision. But that wasn't enough. Every grain of rice was inspected by hand by specially trained staff. The grains had to be absolutely identical in size and perfectly shaped. Anything that didn't meet the standard was mercilessly discarded. This is not a joke or exaggeration. This was an actual protocol followed with complete seriousness. Fish for his table was flown in from Japan on special flights, alive. The tuna had to still be moving when the chef began cutting it. Otherwise, according to Kim, it lost its true flavor. Fujimoto regularly flew to Tokyo for fresh sea urchins, and each trip cost the state tens of thousands of dollars, just for seafood for a single dinner. The menu regularly included live octopus served while still moving, shark fins, sea cucumbers, and beluga caviar delivered from Iran. Wine was exclusively French, aged in the best Bordeaux cellars. As for liquor, Kim Jong-il eventually became one of the largest private buyers of Hennessy in the world. According to Western analysts, he spent around $800,000 a year on alcohol alone. $800,000 in a country where the average monthly salary wasn't even $1. Our witness adds even more disturbing details. Food for every banquet was prepared with a huge surplus, 5 or 6 times more than guests could physically eat. That was the protocol, because the dear leader was not supposed to see empty plates. After the banquet ended, all untouched food was thrown out. One day, our witness saw an entire basin of fresh black caviar being dumped straight into the trash. No one had touched it. Friends, I want you to stop for a second and think about these numbers. An entire basin of caviar into a dumpster. And outside the palace walls, people were boiling grass soup because they had nothing else. This is not a metaphor. These are documented facts. Do you think Kim knew about the scale of the famine in his own country? Or was he so shielded from unpleasant truths that he genuinely believed everyone lived as well-fed as he did? Tell us what you think in the comments. Food, however, was only the prelude. The real madness began after the sun disappeared behind the horizon. Kim Jong-il lived on a completely inverted schedule, one that would horrify any sleep specialist. He woke around 2 or 3 in the afternoon, spent a few hours on what he called work, meaning watching reports and movies, which he adored, and closer to midnight began preparing for the main event of the day. Banquets in the residences started at 2, 3, sometimes even 4 in the morning. The guest list consisted only of the most trusted insiders, senior army generals, key ministers, party officials distinguished by their loyalty. These weren't casual parties. They were carefully staged rituals of power, during which Kim reminded everyone who the true master of the country was. Our witness describes how a typical evening unfolded. First, guests took their seats at lavishly set tables, with Kim always at the head. Endless toasts began, to the dear leader's health, to the prosperity of the party, to victory over imperialists. Refusing to drink, or even sipping too lightly, meant insulting the leader personally. Our witness remembers 70-year-old, battle-hardened generals drinking themselves senseless because Kim kept demanding more toasts. And then, the girls were brought in. And here begins the part of the story that the North Korean regime tried hardest to hide. Pleasure brigades. That's what North Korea calls the special units of young women selected across the country to serve the top leadership. They are trained in closed facilities, taught to dance, sing, entertain guests, and much more. But the dry facts about the selection process don't convey even a fraction of what actually happened at night banquets behind the closed doors of the residences. According to our witness, the girls were brought into the banquet hall in groups, 20, 30, sometimes 50 young women in a single evening. All were young and flawlessly beautiful. Anyone else wasn't accepted into the brigade. They all wore identical traditional Korean dresses at first, which then, on command, were replaced by evening gowns, which then were replaced by something more revealing, and so on in descending order. The dress code changed on the leader's signal. Kim clapped his hands, and the girls would synchronously change clothes right there in the hall. He clapped again, and they removed another layer. It was a kind of game, and only one person set the rules. Our witness recalls that Kim watched not just the girls, but the faces of his generals. He especially enjoyed seeing how the elderly commanders tried to hide their reactions, how terrified they were of looking too openly, and equally terrified of looking away, in case the leader interpreted indifference as disrespect. He played everyone in the room at once, manipulating both girls and generals. To him, they were all toys, puppets in a one-man theater. Kenji Fujimoto, who was present at such events multiple times as a chef, confirms these accounts and adds his own observations. Once, Kim ordered the girls to undress completely, and they obeyed without hesitation. Then he ordered the generals to get up from the table and dance with the naked girls, but established a strict rule: no touching. Anyone who touched would be labeled a thief, and in North Korea, as you know, thieves face harsh punishment. Fujimoto still remembers the surreal picture in every detail. Drunk, elderly men in military uniforms awkwardly shuffling next to naked young women, sweat dripping from their faces from tension. Everyone terrified of accidentally brushing against a partner with an elbow or hip. And Kim Jong-il sat in his armchair, sipping expensive French cognac, smiling like an absolute ruler watching ants scurry around. But this was only the public part of the evening, the part that took place in the main hall in front of dozens of witnesses. After that, selected guests moved to other rooms in the residence.
And this is the part eyewitnesses avoid discussing. Our witness admits he personally did not serve the rooms where Kim and his closest associates went after the public part of the banquet. But he heard what happened there. Everyone heard. The palace walls were not as soundproof as the organizers hoped. After the official feast ended, Kim chose girls to continue the evening in private. Sometimes one, sometimes two, sometimes more, depending on his mood. The chosen ones were silently escorted out of the hall with the leader. High-ranking generals and ministers, especially loyal ones, were also allowed to make their choice, considered a high honor and a sign of exceptional trust. The girls, of course, were never asked for consent. They weren't invited or persuaded. They were simply taken. Another defector, formerly a guard at one of the residences, adds even darker details. According to him, some girls came out of those rooms crying, and some with bruises that later had to be concealed with makeup. Complaining was strictly forbidden. Any complaint would be interpreted as treason against the motherland and the dear leader. The same guard recalls an incident when one girl tried to refuse a high-ranking general due to feeling unwell. The next day, she was taken away from the residence, allegedly to a sanatorium for recovery. Her entire family disappeared with her: parents, younger brother, grandmother. No one ever learned what happened to them, and no one dared to ask. Let's call things by their real name. This was not entertainment. This was not an escort service. This was sexual slavery in its purest form. Thousands of young women passed through this conveyor belt over decades. They had no choice, no voice, no right to refuse. Their bodies belonged to the party and personally to the dear leader. Their own wishes or feelings meant absolutely nothing. Our witness hesitated for a long time before sharing this part, but eventually decided the world deserves to know the truth, even the unpleasant parts. Kim Jong-il had very specific preferences when it came to entertainment. We cannot disclose everything defectors describe in interrogations,
Some details are too explicit for YouTube, and some are simply too disturbing to say out loud. But some things can and should be mentioned. According to eyewitnesses, Kim Jong-il did not always participate personally in the intimate parts of the evening. Often, it was enough for him to simply watch. He would sit in a comfortable chair with a glass of cognac and observe as selected girls from the pleasure brigade performed for his personal amusement. In addition, the leader had a massive video collection, thousands of tapes stored in a dedicated room. And it was not only Hollywood movies, which he famously loved. Among those tapes were other materials, recordings made right there in the residences, featuring girls from the brigade. Rumor has it he sometimes gifted copies of these recordings to his closest associates as a sign of exceptional trust. Fujimoto mentions another detail that reveals the scale of this system. Kim had a special man whose sole responsibility was ensuring a steady supply of fresh material. His job was to constantly find new girls, because the leader quickly grew bored with familiar faces. He needed new bodies, new entertainment. It was a conveyor belt that never stopped, functioning reliably for decades under 3 generations of the Kim dynasty. The most terrifying part of this story isn't even the orgies or the scale of sexual exploitation. The most terrifying part is the contrast between what happened inside the palace walls and what was happening outside. While French champagne was flowing like water inside the residences, while naked girls danced to entertain drunk generals, while the leader browsed a living catalog choosing who would spend the night with him, outside the guarded perimeter unfolded a completely different reality. The 1990s went down in North Korean history under the official name the Arduous March, the regime's euphemism for a period of mass famine. Ordinary citizens survived by eating grass, digging up roots, peeling and boiling tree bark. People caught and ate rats, collected insects, because there was literally nothing else. In remote regions, cases of cannibalism were recorded. Starving people resorted to consuming the bodies of family members who had died of hunger. These facts are documented by international organizations and confirmed by countless defector testimonies. And during this same period, Kim Jong-il ordered live lobsters to be flown in from France. Our witness tells a story that still haunts him. One day, a special delivery arrived at the residence from Scandinavia, a rare type of venison, meat from animals that eat only a specific kind of northern moss, which gives the meat a unique flavor. This delicacy is so expensive that even Western billionaires rarely taste it. But the shipment was delayed, and when it finally arrived, it had already begun to spoil. Several tons of elite venison were simply thrown in the trash without a single attempt to salvage anything. Several tons of premium meat, straight into the garbage. And our witness watched this, knowing full well that his own mother, far away in the provinces, was swelling from malnutrition, and he could do nothing to help her. He was forbidden from bringing home even a crumb of food. Stealing from the dear leader meant execution. Not dismissal, not prison, execution. And not only for him, his entire family would be killed. Every day he walked past armed guards carrying trays loaded with exquisite delicacies, fully aware that his loved ones were slowly dying from hunger. According to him, this was the most unbearable part of the job. Not the orgies, not the humiliation of women, not the drunken antics of generals, but this daily torment, knowing you are feeding monsters while your own family is starving hundreds of kilometers away. Friends, I want you to pause for just a moment and imagine yourself in his place. Every day you see enough food to keep your family alive for a year, and you cannot take even a single crumb Because if you do, not only you, but your mother, father, and children will be executed. 3 generations punished for one person's crime. What would you feel in his place? Write in the comments. The banquets usually ended by sunrise. Around 6 or 7 in the morning, the guests finally left. Dead drunk generals collapsed onto the back seats of their government Mercedes. Girls from the brigade were loaded onto buses and taken back to their closed barracks. And the service staff began the hardest part of the job, cleaning up. Our witness recalls they had to work extremely fast, with no breaks. By noon, everything had to be spotless, just in case the dear leader woke up earlier than usual and decided to stroll through the halls. Staff collected leftovers, removed hundreds of empty bottles after each event, changed bedding in the private rooms. Sometimes, he says, the sheets revealed traces that spoke for themselves. Blood. This meant the night had been, as the cleaners whispered among themselves, a rough one. No one asked questions. No one met anyone's gaze. People worked silently, trying not to think about what had taken place in those rooms, wishing only for the day to end as quickly as possible. And then evening came, and everything started again. Day after day, week after week, year after year. A never-ending cycle of gluttony, drunkenness, exploitation, and violence. And all this time, the country beyond the palace walls continued to slowly die from famine and repression. In December 2011, Kim Jong-il died of a heart attack, and power passed to his youngest son, Kim Jong-un. A young man educated at a prestigious Swiss school with a round, almost childlike face and a fashionable haircut, he initially seemed completely different from his father. Many Western journalists and political analysts cautiously hoped for change. Maybe a new generation of leaders would be more civilized. Maybe the young ruler would attempt reforms. These hopes were misguided. According to testimonies from recent defectors, under Kim Jong-un, the pleasure brigade system has not only survived, it continues to expand. Night banquets are still held regularly. Girls are selected and trained by the same methods used under his father and grandfather. Moreover, some reports claim the young leader is even more demanding when it comes to entertainment. He is younger, more energetic, and his appetites match. Rumor has it that one new selection criterion for the brigade is higher education. Kim supposedly prefers girls who can hold a conversation as well as entertain physically. Our witness left North Korea in 2018, so he cannot know everything happening today. But he stays in touch with other defectors. According to them, the system functions as before and may have become even more elaborate. There are rumors of modern European-style parties involving narcotics and even harsher entertainment than under the previous leader. Nothing has truly changed. North Korea remains a paradise for the Kim family and a hell for the other 25 million citizens. Right now, as you watch this video, somewhere in a residence near Pyongyang, staff are setting tables for another night banquet. They're placing dishes of rare delicacies, opening bottles of $1,000 cognac, laying out silver cutlery. Somewhere in closed barracks, young women are putting on identical dresses and rehearsing bows, preparing for yet another entrance into the banquet hall. They don't know how the night will end, who will be chosen, who will be taken to private rooms, who will be lucky, if that word even applies. And beyond the palace walls stretches a hungry, impoverished, terrorized country. 25 million people locked inside a giant prison without windows or doors. People who have no idea how their beloved leader actually lives. Or maybe they suspect, but remain silent. Because here, A careless word can get your entire family executed. This is not ancient history. It is not a dark fairy tale for adults. This is happening right now, at this very moment, thousands of kilometers from you. And the world prefers to look away, because North Korea is far, because it has nuclear missiles, because no one knows what to do about it. The man who told us this story lives in constant fear. He changed his name and documents long ago. He moves every few months. He flinches at any stranger with an Asian appearance. He knows the Kim regime does not forgive betrayal, and that their agents can reach almost any point on the globe. But he chose to speak, because silence makes you an accomplice. In the next video, we'll talk about those who try to escape this nightmare, the defectors of North Korea. You'll learn about secret escape routes through minefields, bribed border guards, human traffickers who exploit despair, and the bodies of runaway families that the Tumen River washes onto the South Korean bank every spring. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the continuation.
And tell us in the comments, do you think the North Korean people will ever learn the full truth about their leaders? Or will this secret die together with the regime? Thank you for watching till the end. See you next time.